Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
C says Heaven's Gate away team.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101. Time for Kenzie's Krimes, where she takes us on a journey, drama, mystery, murder of something that happened in the Chicagoland area, our local area. So, Kenzie, give it to us.
Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb.
Not hitting me, those names.
Really?
I know.
So they were childhood friends, both from wealthy families living in Kenwood, which is a suburb of Chicago. Nathan Leopold was 19 and had just graduated from the University of Chicago and was hoping to be accepted into Harvard Law School. Well, Richard Loeb, who was 18 at the time, was studying history at the University of Chicago Law. Now he, that being Richard Loeb, was obsessed with the idea of the perfect crime. His neighbor and friend, Nathan Leopold, was a law student and a believer in Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm doing my best to pronounce that. It's a German name. Concept of Superman, which is the idea that it is possible to rise above both good and evil and not be associated with either of those concepts.
So there's an Entourage episode where they talk about, is it Nietzsche or Nietzsche?
I Googled it, and a super German accent told me it was Nietzsche, and I'm going with that because I'll tell you what, not one of my native tongues, so I'm going to believe them.
And I can't remember how they solved it. I can't remember the answer or what was right.
Right, because this is pre-Google. How do you pronounce?
I'm always looking for an Entourage tie-in. That's how you get me.
Unrelated to this story specifically.
Yes.
Okay. So Richard Loeb charmed everybody with his good looks, cool manner, totally the cool kid, right? Now, a lot said that Nathan Leopold was awkward looking. I don't know. I'm not calling him that. This is a quote. Okay?
That's just mean, right?
Right. So I don't want people to be like, why would you say that about him? He tended to hide in his friend's shadow, okay? But the two young men formed a powerful bond. It's actually been said that Nathan, he's the older one, was in love with Richard and would do anything he wanted so that way he could get like a little something, something. There's a lot of little something, something rumors going on. I don't exactly know what his preferred something, something was, but it's what he wanted. Okay. He later wrote that Loeb's friendship was necessary to me. Terribly necessary. Richard Loeb was enthralled, like I said earlier, with the idea of a perfect crime. And that was Nathan's motive for this murder, was to please Dick. I guess they called him Dickie because he was Richard. So, kind of funny. But that was the quote, so I can't change it.
Kind of funny.
What are the odds? Because it's like a double entendre. Anyway, Leopold and Loeb created a plan to commit the perfect crime. It was not so much at the idea of murder that attracted them, but the idea of getting away with murder. On May 21st, 1924, Leopold and Loeb lured a young neighborhood boy who they actually knew in the neighborhood and hung out with before. He was 14-year-old Bobby Frank. He lured them into their car. They killed him with a chisel and stuffed his body in a culvert.
Terrible.
The next morning, the Frank family received a special delivery letter, a ransom note demanding $10,000 in unmarked bills for the return of the boy. Although their plans to conceal their identities and collect a large ransom were elaborate and intricate, and they thought of everything, Leopold and Loeb were caught almost immediately because Nathan Leopold dropped a pair of glasses near to where the body of Bobby Franks had been left, which was on the Pennsylvania Railroad tracks and the 118th Street in Chicago.
Okay.
Mind you, this is like a very rich family. So the glasses had a special patented spring for the expensive horned rim frame, to which had only been sold in one place in Chicago and only purchased by 3 people, probably because of how expensive it was.
Yeah.
Guess which one of those people it was? Nathan and Leopold. So once in custody, both Leopold and Loeb showed no remorse. They confessed in great detail to the crime, both to the authorities and to the press. One of the only inconsistencies in their confession from each other was both said the other one was the one that did the stabbing of Bobby Franks in their separate confessions.
Got it.
Everything was in line except for that. They both blamed the other. Now, at the time, this was like death penalty ridden. And it is crazy to me because I'm going to pause right here. The criminal defense lawyer they got, the stance that he took as to why they shouldn't get the death penalty, that's why this case has been studied forever. All
right, when we come back in 3 minutes, we'll hear the conclusion on why that is so fascinating and historic. And Kenzie's Crimes are here with Brian and Kenzie on Q101.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with the conclusion of Kenzie's Crimes, and always leaves us with a cliffhanger of sorts on why this case is so important, what she's talking about. And I'll let you do a little recap here, I guess.
Yeah, so if you're just joining us, you actually may know this story. Leopold and Loeb were two teenagers who lived in Kenwood, Illinois. It was a very rich suburb. They had very, very rich family members, and they were super connected to each other, rumored romantic relationship as well, and they were obsessed with the idea of committing the perfect crime. They literally wanted to get away with murder, and that's what they did. They murdered a young 14-year-old Bobby Frank just for the sake of getting away with it, but they did not get away with it. They got caught, and they confessed in great detail to the crime that they committed. So Leopold and Loeb's parents hired the best and most expensive criminal attorney they could find, Clarence Darrow. Now, Clarence was actually the name of my dog growing up, but
oh no!
So I'm like, no, I love that name.
I thought it was Salvatore.
Salvatore was my cat.
Oh.
Clarence was the dog, named after It's a Wonderful Life. It's the name of the angel.
Wow.
In that movie. Okay. Anywho.
Great movie.
Such a good movie. So Darrow knew his clients would obviously be convicted. They had confessed. There had been the glasses were where they found the body, so very obvious they are guilty, right? It was his goal to save their lives, though. He did not want them to get the death penalty. So that's what he was really on this case to do. Now, Americans read every detail of the Leopold Loeb trial. Again, this was in 1924, right? So by 1924, automobiles like Ford's popular Model T, like this is just becoming popular. And you know what one of the fears was? That it was increasing criminal mobility. So cars becoming so popular were actually scaring people because criminals were able to get around, dump bodies easier, things like that, which that's kind of mind-blowing to us because cars are just so a staple in what we do. I wouldn't think of it that way. So Chicago's WGN, they actually considered broadcasting the trial live. This is like radio and homes time, right? But decided it was too inappropriate to, put in the living rooms of families. It was so scary.
Well, thank God we waited until OJ to do that.
Amen.
Also, we're now doing it on the radio.
Yeah, we're
live.
doing it too.
So, okay. The trial reached its climax with Clarence Darrow's closing argument. It was 12 hours long, his closing argument. You think I talk a lot. Okay. Darrow admitted the guilt of his clients, but argued that it was forces beyond their control that influenced their actions. So law professor Philip Johnson describes this argument because we do not have recordings of it. He said that nature made him do it. Evolution made him do it. Nietzschewitz, whatever you said into Entourage. Nietzsche made them do it. Like his philosophy, his this. So they should not be sentenced to death for it. He convinced the judge of this. It spared them. The judge sentenced them to life imprisonment plus 99 years.
The judge probably just wanted to go to lunch. I mean, it's like 12 hours of the guy talking about this. Fine. No death penalty. Can I go to Jimmy John's now?
He's
please.
like, I feel like I'm dying.
Yeah.
So the pair actually went to separate prisons, and their families disowned both of them because they were well-known, well-off families. Loeb was actually later killed by a fellow inmate in prison in 1936, so not that much longer later. Well, Leopold eventually paroled in 1958 and lived the remainder of his life as a free man, even publishing writing. And he died in 1971.
So he lived pretty long.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
It is not fair.
Did they ever determine which one did the stabbing part of it?
No, because they both... they were both in the car, though, because they did it in the car.
Yeah.
This case, to this day, people still bring up discussions about it because, yeah, it is the world's fault. I'd be like, nope. I feel like I would not have agreed with that. But, I mean, he must have been a very good lawyer.
It's the Grand Theft Auto theory. They must be playing video games that caused them to do it. What I mean? Early, of course, later on, but that's it. I played bad video games. Violent video games made you do it.
Not your fault.
Yeah.
I agree.
What are you supposed to do?
Kenzie's Crimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a north side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
See, says Heaven's Gate away team.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.